There have been 14 major models of the human mind in recorded history. They did not replace each other. They stacked. The modern person in 2026 is not running one mind. They are running 14, each inherited from a previous era's best guess, most of which silently contradict each other inside the same skull. The checkpoint will tell you what each model of the mind actually was, what each civilization believed the mind was made of, where each model came from, why each one made sense at the time, and why the model currently in charge of your suffering is almost never the model you think you live by. By the end of this video, you will be able to name out loud which of the 14 models was running you the last time you could not sleep at 3 in the morning. And you will know the one question every wisdom tradition agrees. You have to ask that model tonight before it makes the next decision for you. Before you do anything else, hear this. Before the first model is named, one thing has to be said clearly. The mind has a history. The checkpoint will repeat that. The mind has a history. The brain, as a biological organ, has been roughly the same for the last 200,000 years. The architecture of the human skull, the cortex, the limbic system, the brain stem, these have not meaningfully changed since the species emerged. But the mind, what humans have believed the mind to be, where they believed it lived, what they believed it was made of, who they believed was in charge of it, this has changed at least 14 times. And every one of those models is still inside you. The checkpoint will tell you why this matters. When you wake up at 3 in the morning convinced something is wrong, the model of mind that is doing the convincing is almost never the model you would consciously identify with. It is an older model, an inherited model, a model from an era whose name you have probably never spoken out loud. To inspect that model, you have to first know it exists. The checkpoint will now lay out all 14 in order, from the oldest to the one running in your phone tonight. Era 1, the animist mind. For roughly the first 190,000 years of human existence, the mind was not a thing inside the human. The mind was a breath that moved between humans, animals, rivers, stones, weather, and stars. The earliest human cultures, the cultures that produced the cave paintings at Chauvet 37,000 years ago, the rock art at Bhimbetka, the totemic traditions of the San and the Aboriginal peoples did not draw a hard line between what was inside the head and what was outside it. The wind had a mind. The river had a mind. The mountain had a mind. The bear had a mind. The dead had a mind. The mind was the aliveness itself, and it moved. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You did not own your mind. You hosted it. The mind passed through you on its way to somewhere else. The cargo this model left behind, the feeling which every modern person still sometimes has, that the strong emotion you are feeling right now is not yours, that it came from somewhere else, that it is moving through you, that it will leave you when it is ready. The reason that feeling has not gone away in 200,000 years is that the animist model is still inside you. It is the oldest occupant of the room. When you say the room had a strange energy, the city has a bad feeling tonight, I picked up something from him. That is the animist mind speaking. The checkpoint is not asking you to believe this model is true. The checkpoint is asking you to notice that it is operating. Era 2. The ancestral mind. As the first agricultural settlements emerged 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, a second model of mind layered itself on top of the animist one. The mind was now a line, a continuous voice running from the dead through the living to the unborn. The Chinese cosmological tradition formalized this in the concept of the zong, the lineage. The African traditional religions formalized it in the practice of ancestor veneration. The Roman household formalized it in the lares. The spirits of the family dead fed daily at the hearth. The Hebrew Bible commands you to honor your father and your mother, a commandment older than the Bible itself, found in nearly every agricultural society on earth. The checkpoint check will tell you what this model believed about you. The voice inside your head was, in significant part, the voice of those who came before you. You were not the originator of your own thoughts. You were the latest speaker of an older sentence. The cargo this model left behind, the experience which every modern person still sometimes has, of hearing your mother's voice come out of your own mouth, of catching yourself in your father's posture, your grandmother's worry, your grandfather's resentment. The reason this still happens is that the ancestral mind never went away. It is the second occupant of the room. When you say, I sound just like her, I cannot believe I just did the thing I swore I would never do. That is the ancestral mind speaking. The checkpoint will return to this model later, when the seventh era begins to silently erase it. Era 3, the mythic mind. By roughly 3,000 years before the Common Era, the major early civilizations, Sumerian, Egyptian, Babylonian, early Vedic, had begun to populate the mind with named gods. Anger was not your anger. Anger was a visit from Era, or from Aries, or from Rudra. Love was a visit from Inanna, or Aphrodite, or Kama. Inspiration was a visit from the muse. Madness was the touch of a god. Grief was the visit of a chthonic deity from below. The Greek scholar Julian Jaynes, in his 1976 book, The Origin of Consciousness, in the breakdown of the bicameral mind, made the most radical version of this claim, that pre-classical humans literally heard their gods as auditory voices in the right hemisphere and only began to experience those voices as their own inner thoughts. Somewhere between the Iliad and the Odyssey, that the I in your head, the modern interior monologue, is no older than about 3,000 years. The checkpoint will not ask you to take Jaynes's full argument literally. The checkpoint will ask you to notice the residue, the cargo this model left behind, the experience which every modern person still sometimes has, of being taken over, of saying that wasn't me, I don't know what came over me, I lost it, as if a separate agent had briefly worn your body. The mythic mind never fully closed. It still uses your mouth. When you say something just snapped in me, I was possessed. That wasn't the real me. That is the mythic mind speaking. And the checkpoint will tell you why this model has not gone away. It has not gone away because it is useful. The mythic mind allows the human to externalize the part of themselves they are most ashamed of. Without that externalization, the shame of certain feelings would be unsurvivable. Era 4, the Vedic mind. Beginning in roughly the second millennium before the Common Era, in the river valleys of the northern Indian subcontinent, a different model of mind emerged, one that has had the longest continuous lineage of any model in history. The Vedic and Upanishadic traditions identified something called Atman, usually translated as self, but more accurately, the witness. The Atman is not the thoughts. The Atman is not the emotions. The Atman is the still presence behind both, the awareness that notices the thoughts and the emotions arriving. The Upanishadic teaching famously asks, who is the seer of the seeing? Who is the hearer of the hearing? Who is the knower of the knowing? The answer is the Atman, the witness behind the witness. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are not your mind. You are the awareness watching your mind. The cargo this model left behind. The experience, which every modern person sometimes has, of suddenly seeing their own thoughts from a slight distance, of catching the inner voice in the act, of realizing I am not that thought, I am the one watching that thought arrive. The reason this experience is possible at all is that the Vedic model is inside you. The witness is the fourth occupant of the room, and arguably the most important one for the rest of this video. The checkpoint will tell you something else about this model that the modern self-help marketplace does not usually mention. The Vedic tradition was very clear that the witness was not something you had to build. The witness was already there. The work was not to construct it. The work was to stop overriding it with the noise of the other 13 models. Hold that distinction. The checkpoint will return to it at the end. Era 5, the Buddhist mind. Around the 5th century before the Common Era, a man named Siddhartha Gautama, raised inside the Vedic tradition, refined the previous model into something more radical. The Buddha agreed with the Vedic teachers that the mind was not the thoughts. He went further. He said the mind was not a thing at all. The Buddhist doctrine of anatta, sometimes translated as no self, holds that what you experience as a continuous me is actually a flowing stream of 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. The self is not a noun, it is a verb. It is something the mind is doing moment by moment. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are not a continuous person carrying experiences through time. You are a process that is rebuilt, fresh, every moment, out of the materials currently available. The cargo this model left behind. The experience, which every modern person sometimes has, of realizing that the person they were 5 years ago is not actually the same person currently inside their body, that they have died and been replaced several times already, quietly, without ceremony. The reason this realization is available to you is that the Buddhist model is inside you. It is the fifth occupant of the room. The checkpoint will return to this model when the 11th era, the neuroscientific mind, accidentally rediscovers it 20,100 years later through brain imaging. Era 6, the Greek tripartite mind. In the 4th century before the Common Era, in the city of Athens, Plato proposed a model of mind that has shaped Western thinking ever since. The mind, Plato wrote in the Republic, has three parts: logistikon, reason; thymos, spirit, or the noble passions; and epithemetikon, appetite, or the base desires. Reason should rule. Spirit should serve reason. Appetite should be governed by both. Plato's student Aristotle, in his Works on the Soul, modified this slightly, but the basic three-part architecture survived. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. The mind is a small republic. There is a citizen in charge. There is a noble part that fights for the citizen. There is an unruly part that has to be governed. The cargo this model left behind, the entire Western experience of feeling internally divided. The sense that there is a reasonable you and an unreasonable you, that they are fighting and that one of them should be winning more. Every time you say, part of me wants to go and part of me wants to stay. I know I shouldn't, but I want to. My heart says one thing and my head says another. That is the Greek tripartite mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The Greek model installed into Western consciousness the idea that reason should rule. 2,400 years later, the modern self-help marketplace is still essentially selling you Plato, the idea that if you could just get your logistikon in charge of your epithemetikon, your life would work. The Buddhist model from the previous era would have asked you to notice instead that the citizen, the soldier, and the unruly servant are all temporary appearances of the same flowing process. The Vedic model would have asked you, who is watching the three parts fight? The Greek model alone is the one that turned the inner fight into a moral failure. That choice, that the loss of self-control is a flaw rather than a signal, is one of the heaviest inheritances in the modern mind. Era 7. The Hebrew and Christian mind. Beginning in the first millennium before the Common Era, in the Hebrew scriptures, and elaborated through the early Christian tradition, the mind became something new, a soul on trial. The mind was now the field on which a moral examination was being conducted by an observing God. Every thought was potentially significant. Every desire was potentially a sin. The interior life was no longer just yours. It was witnessed continuously by a presence that would eventually pass judgment. Saint Augustine, in his Confessions in the late 4th century, wrote one of the first great introspective autobiographies in the Western tradition, a 400-page interior inspection of his own thoughts, conducted as if a judge were reading along. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are being watched from the inside. Your private thoughts are not private. The interior life is a moral courtroom in continuous session. The cargo this model left behind. The modern experience of being self-conscious, about being self-conscious, of monitoring your own thoughts, as if someone might be grading them, of feeling shame about thoughts no one will ever know you had. The reason that experience is so universal in the modern person, including in modern people who have no religious belief at all, is that the Hebrew Christian model is the seventh occupant of the room, and it does not require your faith to operate. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. This is the model that invented guilt as a continuous interior weather, distinct from the older mythic visit of a god. Guilt before this era was an event. After this era, guilt became a climate, and the climate has not lifted. The modern person who has never been to church still wakes up at 3 in the morning, feeling watched, judged, and inadequate to a standard they cannot name. That is the Hebrew Christian mind, still seated, still in session. Era 8, the Cartesian mind. In 1637, in a small heated room in the Dutch Republic, a French philosopher named René Descartes published a sentence that would rewire Western consciousness. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes proposed that the mind and the body were two entirely different substances. The body was a machine extended in space, governed by physics. The mind was a non-physical thinking thing, res cogitans, that somehow piloted the body from a kind of cockpit behind the eyes. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are a thinking thing inside a meat machine. The real you is the one having the thoughts. The body is the vehicle, the cargo this model left behind. The modern experience of feeling separate from your own body, of treating the body as something you have rather than something you are, of being surprised repeatedly when your body refuses to do what your thinking thing has instructed it to do. Every time you say, I should be over this by now, I don't understand why I'm still tired. I know it's irrational, but I still feel it. My body keeps doing this thing. My mind has told it not to. That is the Cartesian mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The Cartesian model installed into modernity. The idea that the mind is the real you and the body is along for the ride. That single move broke 400 years of human relationship with the body. Every modern epidemic, burnout, chronic pain, whose source the medical system cannot find, the dissociation of intellectuals from their own emotions, the dieting culture, the grind culture is downstream of this one model. And every modern recovery, somatic therapy, polyvagal theory, trauma-informed practice, yoga, breathwork, even the rediscovery of walking as medicine is an attempt to repair what Descartes broke. Era 9, the Enlightenment rational mind. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, through Locke, through Hume, through Kant, through the philosophies of the French Enlightenment, Descartes' thinking thing was further refined into something specific, a universal calculator. The mind in this model was a rational instrument capable of arriving at correct conclusions if it was given accurate information and sufficient time. The errors of the mind were attributable to bad data, bad education, or distorting passions. Fix those, and the calculator would produce truth. The political project of modernity, democracy, universal education, the scientific method, the abolition of slavery, the rights of man, was built on this model. The assumption was that a sufficiently informed, sufficiently rational populace would converge over time on the same correct answers. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. Your mind is by default capable of truth. If you are not finding truth, the cause is in your inputs, not in your processor. The cargo this model left behind, the modern experience of expecting yourself to think your way out of every emotional state. The belief that if you could just understand your sadness would have to leave. The belief that if you could just reason with your anxiety would have to disperse. Every time you have spent 3 hours analyzing a feeling that did not move 1 inch in response to the analysis, the Enlightenment rational mind was the one running the analysis. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The Enlightenment installed the belief that the mind is trustworthy in proportion to how rational it sounds. 2 centuries of behavioral economics, social psychology, and neuroscience have since demonstrated that this is not how the mind actually works. The mind is a story-making engine first and a calculator a distant second. But the belief that it is a calculator is still seated, still in session, still grading you for not being more rational than you are. R10. The romantic mind. In response to the Enlightenment rational mind, between roughly 1790 and 1850, a counter-movement swept Europe. Romanticism. The Romantic poets and philosophers, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Goethe, Schelling, Emerson, proposed that the deepest truths of the mind were not available to reason at all. The deepest truths were available only to feeling, to intuition, to imagination, to communion with nature, to the immediate emotional response that the rational mind would, if given the chance, talk you out of. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. Your feelings are not noise to be filtered out. Your feelings are the most reliable signal you have. To suppress them in the name of reason is to suppress the only part of you that knows. The cargo this model left behind, the modern conviction alive in every wellness Instagram post and every trust your gut TikTok, that your emotions are information, and that to override them in favor of reason is a kind of self-betrayal. Every time you say, "I just need to listen to my heart," the feeling won't go away, so there must be a reason. My gut is telling me to leave. That is the romantic mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The romantic mind is partly right. Feelings are information, but they are not infallible information. The romantic model, when isolated from the older models that knew how to inspect a feeling rather than just follow It produces a person whose every panic, every craving, every flash of jealousy is treated as a sacred message. The checkpoint sees this every day. The romantic mind has become the dominant model of the post-2010s self-help marketplace. Its single greatest blind spot is its inability to distinguish a true feeling from an inherited one, a feeling that is yours from a feeling that was installed by the family, the algorithm, or the wound. Era 11, the Freudian mind. In Vienna, in 1899, an Austrian neurologist named Sigmund Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams and introduced into modern consciousness an idea that would never leave: the unconscious. The mind in Freud's model was no longer a single thing. It was a house with a basement. The basement contained everything the conscious mind had refused to look at: sexual desires, aggressive impulses, childhood injuries, forbidden memories, all of it pressurized, all of it leaking upward into the conscious house through dreams, slips of the tongue, neuroses, and irrational decisions. Freud's specific clinical theories have been substantially revised, contested, and in many cases discarded. But the general architecture that the conscious mind is the smaller, visible portion of a much larger psyche, most of which operates below awareness, is now scientifically uncontroversial. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. Most of what is running you is happening below your awareness. The you that you think you are is the small lit room at the top of a much larger dark house. The cargo this model left behind, the modern willingness to ask, why am I really doing this? To suspect that the surface reason you have for your behavior is almost never the actual reason, to look for the hidden motive behind the stated one. Every time you say, I think there's something deeper going on, I don't know why I keep doing this, I think this is about something else, that is the Freudian mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The Freudian model gave the modern person the tool of self-suspicion, the willingness to disbelieve their own conscious mind in favor of a deeper one. This was a gift. It also produced the modern person's specific exhaustion, the sense that no matter how much they understand themselves, there is always one more basement below the basement they just discovered. Era 12, the behaviorist mind. From roughly 1920 through 1960, in academic psychology departments in the United States, a radical counter-model emerged: behaviorism. The behaviorists, Watson, Skinner, Thorndike, argued that the interior life Freud had been mapping was scientifically inaccessible and therefore irrelevant. What mattered scientifically was behavior, the observable input, the observable output, and the reinforcement schedule between them. The mind in this model was a black box. You could not see inside it. You could only see what went in and what came out. You shaped a human being not by changing what they thought, but by changing what they were rewarded and punished for. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are what you have been reinforced to do. The interior you imagines yourself to be is a side effect of the behaviors that have been rewarded around you. The cargo this model left behind, the modern fluency with the language of habits, systems, reward boards, streaks, triggers, cues, loops. Every productivity book of the last 50 years, from B.F. Skinner to Charles Duhigg to James Clear, is downstream of the behaviorist mind. Every time you say, I'm trying to build a system that doesn't require willpower, I just need to remove the trigger, I'm trying to make it automatic. That is the behaviorist mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The behaviorist mind is enormously useful for shaping behavior. It is enormously dangerous when it is the only model in use. A purely behaviorist self has no way to ask whether the behavior is the right behavior. It can only ask whether the behavior is happening reliably. A perfectly optimized behaviorist self is capable of becoming an extremely productive stranger to themselves. Era 13, the cognitive mind. Beginning in the 1950s and accelerating through the cognitive revolution of the 1960s and 70s, the dominant model of the academic mind shifted again from black box to computer. The mind was now an information processing system. Perception was input, memory was storage, reasoning was computation, behavior was output. Concepts like working memory, long-term memory, attention, schema, and executive function all entered the popular vocabulary from this model. Most people never notice this. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. You are a biological computer running cognitive programs. Your dysfunction is, in significant part, buggy software, distorted thinking patterns, cognitive errors, faulty schemas that can be debugged through structured intervention. The cargo this model left behind. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the most evidence-based and widely deployed psychotherapy of the last 50 years. The CBT model is the cognitive mind applied. It works repeatedly in randomized controlled trials for depression, anxiety, OCD, insomnia, and many other conditions. Every time you have caught yourself in a cognitive distortion, black and white thinking, catastrophizing, mind reading, overgeneralizing, the cognitive mind is the one that gave you the vocabulary. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The cognitive mind, for all its therapeutic success, has the same blind spot as the Enlightenment rational mind from 2 centuries earlier. It assumes that changing the thought is the deepest possible intervention. It is not equipped to inspect what is under the thought, the body's old fear, the ancestral voice, the mythic shame, the wound that the thought is merely the surface symptom of. The cognitive mind treats the mind as software. The next era will discover that it is also hardware. And the era after that will discover it is also firmware, installed by an outside system whose updates the mind never consented to. Era 13 and a half, really, the back half of Era 13, but distinct enough to name separately. The neuroscientific mind. From roughly 1990 onward, with the development of functional MRI, PET scanning, and high-density EEG, neuroscience for the first time could watch the mind work in real time. The discoveries piled up. Neuroplasticity, the brain physically rewires in response to experience and practice into old age. Neurogenesis, the adult brain grows new neurons. The default mode network, the brain has a baseline activity pattern when you are not focused on anything. And that pattern is what produces the wandering self-referential mind. Mirror neurons. The brain partially simulates the actions and emotions of other people it is watching. The gut-brain axis, the enteric nervous system in your digestive tract, communicates bidirectionally with the brain, and a large portion of your serotonin is produced there. The checkpoint will tell you what this model believed about you. The mind is the brain in real time in this body. Everything the older models attributed to spirit, soul, witness, or unconscious is on this model neural activity. The mind is biology all the way down. The cargo this model left behind. The modern willingness to use the language of dopamine, cortisol, amygdala, prefrontal cortex in everyday conversation about feelings. The popular fluency with nervous system regulation, vagal tone, neurochemistry. Every time you say, "That's just my dopamine talking, my amygdala is firing, I'm dysregulated," that is the neuroscientific mind speaking. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model. The neuroscientific mind has accidentally rediscovered with imaging equipment what the Buddhist mind described 20,500 years ago without imaging equipment. Brain imaging consistently shows that the self, the continuous I, does not correspond to any single brain structure. It is a flowing pattern, a process, anatta, under a different name. 2.5 millennia of contemplative practice and 40 years of neuroscience are converging slowly on the same observation. The mind is not a thing. The mind is something the brain is doing moment by moment. Era 14, the algorithmic mind, the era you are living in. Here is the real issue. For the first time in human history, the model of mind currently being installed into the human is not coming from a religion, a philosophy, a wisdom tradition, or a scientific discipline. It is coming from a feed. The checkpoint will tell you what this means literally. Every algorithmically curated stream, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, the personalized portion of every news site you read, is, in effect, a continuously updated model of who it thinks you are. The model is built from your watch time, your scroll velocity, your hover duration, your engagement signal, your purchase signal, your location, your sleep window, your night mode toggles. That model is then used to decide what you see next. What you see next then shapes what you feel. What you feel shapes what you do. What you do produces more data. The data updates the model. The model updates the feed. The checkpoint will say this once very plainly. The algorithmic mind is the first model of mind in history that you did not inherit from your culture. It is the first model of mind that is being inferred from you in real time by an outside system and then sold back to you as your own. The cargo this model is leaving behind in real time in the bodies of the viewers watching this video. The experience of recognizing yourself in the feed before you recognize yourself in your own head. The experience of discovering what you think by watching what you cannot scroll past. The experience of being told who you are by an entity that has read more of your behavior than your closest friend has and remembers it more accurately than your spouse does. Every time you have said the algorithm knows me better than I know myself. I didn't know I felt that way until I saw the video. The For You page, Read My Mind. That is the algorithmic mind speaking. And it is speaking with your voice after having been trained on it. The checkpoint will tell you the most important inherited consequence of this model, even though the era is too young for its full consequences to be visible. For 200,000 years, the human mind was authored by some combination of body, family, tribe, religion, philosophy, and personal experience. In the last 15 years, a new author has been added to the list. The new author is faster, more attentive, more patient, and infinitely more scaled than any of the previous authors. The new author has no model of your flourishing. It has a model of your engagement. The two are not the same. The checkpoint will now say the thing this entire video has been building to. All 14 of these models are inside you right now simultaneously. When you wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced something is wrong, you are not running one mind. You are running 14, and they are voting. The animist mind is feeling the bad energy of the dark room. The ancestral mind is hearing your mother's voice in your worry. The mythic mind is treating the panic as a visitation from a god you do not name. The Vedic mind is somewhere behind it all, watching the panic arrive. The Buddhist mind is reminding you faintly that the self currently panicking is not the same self that fell asleep 4 hours ago. The Greek tripartite mind is calling the panic unreasonable and the panic felter weak. The Hebrew Christian mind is adding shame about being awake at this hour. The Cartesian mind is wondering why the body will not obey the instruction to sleep. The Enlightenment rational mind is composing a 4-step plan to solve the panic. The romantic mind is asking what the panic is trying to tell you. The Freudian mind is suspecting the panic is about something other than what it claims to be about. The behaviorist mind is asking what triggered it and what reinforced it. The cognitive mind is naming the cognitive distortions inside the panic thoughts. The neuroscientific mind is identifying the cortisol spike and the dysregulated nervous system. And the algorithmic mind on your phone is offering you a video about 3 a.m. anxiety that you did not search for. 14 models, one body. 3 a.m., no clear chair of the meeting. The checkpoint will tell you why this is the actual crisis of the modern interior life. The crisis is not that any of these models is wrong. Each one was a real civilization's best attempt at understanding the mind, and each one captured something the others missed. The crisis is that no one ever taught you they were all in the room with you. So when they fight, you experience it as something is wrong with me, Instead of 14 models are voting, and no one is chairing the meeting. The checkpoint will say one thing here in his own voice. I spent years thinking my mind was one mind. I treated it like one mind. I argued with it like one mind. I tried to fix one mind. And every time the fix worked, a different mind would wake up an hour later and dismantle it. That is the wound this video was written from. The checkpoint did not learn the 14 models from a book first. The checkpoint learned the 14 models from being run over by them, one at a time, for 20 years, while believing he was failing at being one person. The checkpoint will return now to the station voice. But the viewer should know that this video is not theory. It is the map the checkpoint wishes someone had given him at 25. The checkpoint will now give the practice that this entire video was building toward. It is not a complicated practice. It is a single question. The next time you find yourself in a strong emotional state, a panic, a craving, a flash of rage, a sudden grief, a wave of shame, a midnight argument with yourself, pause for exactly 6 seconds. In those 6 seconds, ask one question. Which of the 14 is talking right now? You do not need to know the answer immediately. The question itself is the practice. The question installs the Vedic witness from Era 4, the still presence behind the noise, into a moment that previously had no witness at all. The checkpoint will tell you what tends to happen when this question is asked. Most of the time, the model in charge is not the model the viewer thinks they live by. The educated rationalist discovers it is the Hebrew Christian mind running the 3 a.m. shame. The committed wellness and feelings person discovers it is the Cartesian mind treating the body as a malfunctioning machine. The committed productivity optimizer discovers it is the mythic mind treating their burnout as a visitation from a God they will not name. The committed trust, your gut person discovers their gut, is actually the algorithmic mind, trained on 3 years of For You page scrolling. The discovery is not pleasant. It is almost always useful. The checkpoint will tell you why. Once you can name which model is running you, you can stop arguing with the feeling and start asking, what does that model want? And once you ask that, you can usually give the model what it actually needs. A smaller, more accurate gift than the feeling was demanding. And the feeling, having been heard at the level it was actually operating on, will often quiet. That is the practice. The checkpoint will now leave the viewer with a short atlas. For each of the 14 models, one sentence about what that model actually wants when it is the loudest voice in the room. The animist mind wants the environment changed, the lights softened, the windows opened, the room moved. The ancestral mind wants the lineage acknowledged, the name of the dead spoken, the inherited pattern recognized, the unspoken grief allowed to come up. The mythic mind wants the intensity named as bigger than you, the rage called by a name older than yours, the grief allowed to be the grief, not my grief. The Vedic mind wants nothing. It is already content. It only wants the noise turned down enough that it can be heard. The Buddhist mind wants the temporariness remembered. This is a wave, not the ocean, and the wave is already in motion past you. The Greek tripartite mind wants a clear hierarchy. The parts not eliminated, but arranged, with the reasoning part allowed to lead one decision while the other parts get heard. The Hebrew Christian mind wants absolution, not just for the act, but for the existence of the desire underneath the act. It wants permission to have been the kind of being who could have wanted that. The Cartesian mind wants the body translated, the symptom named in the language of the thinking thing. So the cockpit can issue an instruction it believes the meat will follow. The Enlightenment rational mind wants a plan, even a wrong plan. The plan is the comfort, not the correctness. The romantic mind wants the feeling honored, not necessarily obeyed, but received, named, not bulldozed by the rational mind. The Freudian mind wants the real reason exposed, the deeper layer pulled into the lit room, even when it is unflattering. The behaviorist mind wants the trigger removed, the cue, the cookie, the open tab, the phone in the bedroom, the friend who is the unprocessed grief disguised as friendship. The cognitive mind wants the thought reframed, the catastrophe shrunk to its actual size, the mind reading checked against evidence, the should statement softened. The neuroscientific mind wants the nervous system regulated, the breath slowed, the cold water on the face, the long exhale, the walk in daylight, the night mode on the phone, and the algorithmic mind. The algorithmic mind wants more of what you just gave it. The algorithmic mind cannot tell you what you need. It can only tell you what it can sell more of. Treat its suggestions with the same caution you would give to a very attentive stranger who is paid by commission. The checkpoint will give one more piece of guidance. 14 models are in the room. None of them are going away. You do not have to choose one and execute the other 13. You have to choose a chair. Every wisdom tradition that has lasted more than 3 centuries has converged on the same answer for who that chair should be. The chair is the witness, the Vedic Atman, the Buddhist awareness, the Christian interior eye, the Sufi kalb, the Stoic prohairesis, the romantic imagination, the neuroscientific metacognition. Different names, same chair. The chair is the one inside Yash that can notice the other 13 without being any of them. The checkpoint will tell you something the wellness industry will not tell you. The chair does not have to be enlightened. The chair does not have to be calm. The chair does not have to be wise. The chair only has to be present enough to ask the question. The chair is built 1 6-second pause at a time. The checkpoint will now tell you why this is no longer optional. For most of human history, the previous 13 models were the only models writing the mind. They were slow. They were partly contradictory. They were inherited at human speed. The 14th model, the algorithmic mind, is writing at machine speed. It is writing 12 hours a day, on average, into the average modern phone user. It is writing into the half-asleep mind in the morning, the procrastinating mind in the afternoon, the lonely mind at midnight. It is writing more sentences into the average modern mind in a week than the average modern mind has ever consciously authored. If no one is in the chair, the algorithmic mind takes the chair by default, not because it is wise, because it is loud, fast, and never absent. The checkpoint will say this once in his own voice, so the viewer hears the wound underneath the warning. I lost a year of my life letting the feed think for me, while believing it was me thinking. The thoughts felt mine. They were not. They were the model the system had built of me, played back at me, until I could no longer tell the difference between an opinion I held and a video I had finished watching. The checkpoint returns to the station voice. To install a chair inside yourself is, in the algorithmic era, the practical equivalent of installing a lock on the door of your interior life. It does not stop the visitors. It decides who gets in. The checkpoint will give the viewer a daily form of the practice, small enough to actually do. Once a day, at any chosen hour, sit for 2 minutes with no input, no phone, no music, no window, no book. Notice which voices show up. Name them by era. That was the ancestral mind. That was the Cartesian mind. That was the algorithmic mind suggesting a video. Do not argue with them. Do not silence them. Just name them. The naming is the practice. The chair is being built by the naming. After 30 days of this, the viewer will begin to notice something. There will be a small lag between the voice arriving and the response leaving. That lag is the chair taking its seat. The checkpoint will add one more thing. Of the 14 models, only a few of them know what to do with the body. The animist mind knows. The Cartesian mind, by contrast, treats the body as a vehicle. The Enlightenment, cognitive, and behaviorist minds treat the body as a substrate. The mythic and Hebrew Christian minds treat the body as a battlefield. The body is the only thing in the room that has actually been there for all 14 eras. When the 14 are fighting, the body is the place to ask what is true. Not the loudest model, the body. The breath slowed. The shoulders dropped. The face washed with cold water. The feet on the ground. The eyes looking at something further away than a screen. The checkpoint has watched many viewers spend years inside the cognitive mind, debating thoughts with thoughts, and resolve more in 3 minutes of the breath than in 3 months of the debate. The body knows things the 14 models do not. The body is the 15th occupant of the room and the only one with a vote that does not require translation. The checkpoint will tell you where this practice can live in a way that does not require you to remember to do it. There is a small private app called Drift Inward, built for exactly the kind of inspection this video has been describing. The viewer can sit with it at the end of the day. Write a single sentence about which model is loudest tonight, and let the AI reflection feature surface. The contradictions between the model running the suffering and the model the viewer believes they live by. The journaling stays private. The AI meditation feature can take the loudest model and turn it in real time into a short personalized meditation designed for that model, not a generic calming one. The checkpoint mentions this not as a sale, but as a continuation. The chair this video has been building can have a daily room to sit in. The checkpoint will now issue the ruling. The ruling, you do not have one mind. You have 14. The work of an adult interior life is not to silence 13 of them. It is to install inside yourself a chair, a still witness that can name which of the 14 is talking before you act on what it said. The checkpoint will close with one sentence and then leave the room. The mind has a history. So does the suffering. So does the way out. The checkpoint will see you at the next checkpoint.